Hi, I'm Ryan Egyub. Welcome to the Tulsa Welding School. I'm an instructor here. We're up here on Plant Jax, a plant that was built here at our Jacksonville campus so students could come up here and simulate in-place welding. So today we're kind of going to do the granddaddy of pipe tests. Anytime if you're a pipe welder trying to get a job, anytime you go, you end up taking this 60-10, 70-18 weld test in the 6G position. It's usually a 6-inch pipe. They also sometimes like to do the 2-inch super wall pipe. Again, I've simulated 2 fit-ups on this, a tight fit-up with a 3/32 and an 1/8 inch, just to kind of show you both methods. I'll be running 1/8 60-10, about 75 amps on the root. Then I'll go to my 3/32 70-18 for my hot pass, and then I'll cap it, or I'll fill it and cap it with 1/8 inch rods. Just because of the size of the bevel and the thickness of the pipe, it's more efficient. We save more material by using the 1/8 inch rod. So let's go ahead and get started. So as you see, we're simulating an in-place weld. So I got my leads ran up here. I got all my stuff. Again, before I get down here to dance with this thing, I want to make sure that I'm not stepping on my wire. Everything's out of my way. So I want to get down in here, get our rod and the stinger. So a lot of times when we do these welds in position, we'll be kneeling on something. So knee pads are good to do. One thing that I've always went by is I don't strap them to myself. That way if a piece of slag rolls down my leg and gets stuck in the knee pad, all I got to do is pivot out of it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here on this root. Again, we're simulating an in-place weld. Again, just a little whip and pause motion. I'm digging a hole, I'm filling it up. What I'm really listening for is that growling sound. If it's growling and that fire's going inside the pipe, I know I'm penetrating. If it's not making that growling sound and it's spitting fire at me, I know I'm not going into the backside with penetration. We got the first section of our root done. It ran pretty good. We didn't really have too many problems. So up here when I come off of the tack, this is the other part of my fit up that I want to simulate for you guys. Is this is a tighter fit up, because not always when you're doing an in-place weld in the field, your fit up's not always going to be perfectly gapped all the way around. So this portion of it, I can actually stand up and I'll be able to see, and I'll be more comfortable. I don't have to be on my knees anymore. So again, I'll start back here on my tack, get my rod nice and warm, and I'll whip and pause towards my keyhole. But the gap here is tighter, so now I got to start to slow down a little bit. Again, letting that rod get good and hot. Come into my keyhole, I sit for just a second, and there's that good growling sound we're listening for. Nice manageable sized keyhole. Keeping that rod centered in them bevels, just pushing it in. Hearing that good growling, running pretty nice for us. Now we're going to weld through our tack. Again, on these welds, we want full roots on this. So we want our tacks to look like they're part of the root. We don't want any lack of fusion. We don't want to see the knife edge on the back anywhere. We'll go ahead and we'll wire wheel this off so we can get a look at it. So what we're looking for on our root, it should lay in pretty nice and flat. We shouldn't really have to grind this a whole lot. You know, really just skim grind it. Shouldn't be a whole lot of undercut, a whole lot of slag after we wire wheel. Shouldn't be too many lumps. Just kind of where our restart is where our high spot should be. So we'll go over here, we'll do this next side. So again, now we're gonna start the other side. Same thing, same rod. We're always on this 6G. If we're not running downhill 60-10, we're always running the root uphill and our 70/18 uphill. A good rule of thumb is if it slags, we drag. So again, as you can see, we're simulating this in-place weld. I got my bucket here, right in my zone where I got everything I could need. You know, everything's nice and contained. I put all my used rods in there as well, so I'm not gonna kneel on a hot rod. I like to bend my rod in my direction to travel as I roll my wrist with the pipe. So I like to start here, and then all I gotta do is roll my wrist up and around. All right, let's go ahead and put the rest of this root in. Let the rod get good and hot. Come into our keyhole nice and slow. Again, we got that good growling sound coming along pretty nice. Again, I'm digging a hole, I'm coming back to fill it up. I dig a hole, I come back and fill it up. Rolling my wrist with the contour of the pipe, keeping that rod nice and centered. So I'll actually have to do a restart on this side. And when I do my restarts, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my wire wheel. I'm gonna grind back right there where I just stopped. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna look in there. Everything's running pretty nice. So in this particular instance, being in place, we don't always wanna have to feather our tack. So this is a pretty clean stop. My keyhole's still pretty clean. So all I'll do is I won't actually feather this back. I'll just start here. When I come into the keyhole, I'll pause for a second, and then we'll just finish right back up into that tack. All right, so we're gonna go ahead. And the way I do these restarts when I don't grind back, I go about 1/4 to a 1/2 inch back. I start my rod, I long arc it a little bit, I let it get warm, then I just start whipping and pausing up towards my keyhole. The most important part is when we come back into that keyhole we just left is to pause for a second to let it fill. That way we don't get underfill on the back side. So I'll pause for a second. And just like that, now we can go back into the stand-up position. Again, put all my spent rods in this bucket. I don't want to put anything flammable down in that bucket near them hot rods. Again, I don't want to be dropping my rods over here and then I go to kneel down off of my knee pad and I end up with my knee in a hot rod. So again, my top side, I fit this up to simulate 2 different types of gaps. So the bottom was an 1/8 inch. Up here on the top, as you notice, now I have to slow down and let that keyhole burn into that 3/32 gap. Kind of simulates a real world fit up. So again, for me, it's always my rod bent in the direction of travel. I start with my hand open and I roll my wrist around the contour of the pipe. So we'll go ahead and we'll finish this root out and then we'll talk about our hot pass. So again, I sit there in the keyhole and pause for a minute. There's that good growling sound. I know I got penetration going in the back. just like that, we got the root in this thing. So, first order of business is obviously we're gonna wire wheel all this slag out of here real nice and clean. Again, we wanna keep all of our stuff up and away from us, hang our stinger over something that's safe, where it's not gonna fall. Now we'll take our file, we'll go down here on the inside, we'll knock that slag off. And really our important parts are, we want to make sure we made all of our tack tie-ins. So it looks like we did a pretty good job. All of our tacks are tied in, we got good reinforcement all the way around, we're not over reinforced. We ain't got no holes, no knife edge still showing, everything looks pretty good. So we'll go ahead, get our grinding wheel switched over. Like I said, when we put this root in properly, we shouldn't really have to grind it to death. So we've got a couple high spots on our starts and stops, you know, wherever, just go ahead and clean them up. Swap over here to the other side, get the other side of our pipe. So a lot of times when we're doing these weld coupons or we're taking a weld test or we're just practicing, we can take our pipe out of place and, you know, when we do our grinding. It's good to really leave your pipe in place and make your weld better and grind less because, you know, we're out in the field, and I know this isn't a perfect fit up, like I said, it's a simulation. We're out in the field and this is a true line here. There is no pulling this out. So we got to learn to grind in place, and if we make our weld better, we got to grind less. So moving on to our hot pass. On my hot pass, I like to do a single hot pass, just a little like a circle motion, you know, one single bead, tying into both bevels, pausing a little bit, and it always works out pretty good for me. So we're gonna go ahead and get that started. So like I said, we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get that hot pass started. Like I said, I like to do a little circle motion. Always got my rod bent in the direction of my travel. We'll get down in here, like I said, we're welding bottom to top, so 6 to 3 to 12, 6 to 9 to 12. Go ahead and get this thing going. Like I said, just doing my little circle. I prefer this one bead pass for my hot pass, and then I go to a 2 bead on my fill. Again, on this 6G, it's very important that we roll our wrists with the contour of the pipe so we don't push the 70-18. We don't push 70-18s. So again, now that I'm starting to come up the pipe, now I actually have to rise off of my heels, extending my legs back a little bit. Get our slag saw out. We'll go ahead and knock the slag off of this. Sorry, my glasses are fogging up. And as we can see there, we're tying into both toe lines. We're not trapping any slag, so everything's looking pretty good. We'll go ahead and brush that off before we do our restart. That's about the size we're looking for, nothing too huge. Again, good to come over here with your slag saw. or your chipping hammer and just scrape your toe lines, because there is a thin film slag that'll get stuck in there. It's not an inclusion, it's not thick enough where you usually get it on your first go round. So I just like to go back over it. Again, we'll get our stinger here. So again, we're gonna come off our restart. Just like everything else, our restarts are very important. Do my dry run, again, I always start with my hands like this. That way all I gotta do is roll with the contour of the pipe. Again, restart's very important on this. We don't want it to ball up on us. We want it to be nice and smooth. We long arc down to it. We trace out our crater. And then again, we're just back into this little circle motion. You can run this hot pass in a split bead, run two. I just prefer to knock it out in one shot. I've never had a problem with it failing. We're going to start to roll our wrists up so we keep that rod right at a 90-degree angle in there. Get right up there to about 12 o'clock and we stop. Get our rod out of our stinger. Set our stinger back up there. And again, get our slag saw. Just knock our slag out. And go right there around our toe lines real good. Get our brush out. And that's really the optimal size for the hot pass. It's split, it's centered right in between the two bevels. That's really what we're looking for. So we'll hop over here on the other side, we'll finish this hot pass out, then we'll talk about our fill. Go ahead, we'll get down in here. Again, our restarts on this 6G, very important, especially on the bottom. We want to try to stagger them out a little bit. And all right, we're gonna go ahead and get back into it. It's a little bit tighter under here. This is a good simulation of an in-place weld in the field. A little bit uncomfortable to start. Now we start to roll our wrists with the contour. We're getting more comfortable. The rod's coming towards our face. Things are getting easier for us. Go ahead and break it off because our rod's getting short on us. Get our rod out of our stinger, get our slag saw back out over here. Go ahead and we'll just knock the slag off of it. Again, when we're chipping slag, we also want to be careful that we're down here on our knees, these knee pads are open. We want to be careful we don't get any slag down in there and burn our knees up. We got a nice smooth restart even though we were a little bit uncomfortable, and that's the important part. Go ahead and get our brush down before we get restarted. Go ahead and we'll finish out this hot pass. So right here, I don't feel comfortable going to my feet just yet. So I'll start here and I'll run up to probably about right here, then I'll do another restart and we'll finish out till 12 o'clock. Again, rod bent in the direction of my travel. Come back into it and make my restart. Now I'm starting to rise up, roll with the contour of the pipe a little bit more. So right there is where I'll stop at. I'll go ahead and stand up and we'll finish out the rest from the standing position. So again, we just knock our slag off. It should come off pretty nice and smooth. It's about the size we're looking for on that bead. It's got a nice appearance. Sounds good. It's running pretty smooth for us, so we're not going to change any amperages. We'll go back to our 3/32 again. Like always, keep my rod bent in the direction of my travel. Find a spot where I'm going to be comfortable, which is probably going to be over here. Go ahead and make sure I'm not tripping over my stinger. Do me a little dry run, then we're ready to go. Again, I keep my wrist rolling with the contour. Hit my tie-in and I stop. Try to maintain the same bead size all the way around. We're swapping into our wire wheel. We'll go ahead and clean up our whole hot pass with it, then we'll move on to our fill. Clean off any of the spatter BBs we might have, any existing slag. Just make sure we get this weld nice and clean before we start into our fill pass. So we got a good clean weld, about the same size all the way around. That's really what we're looking for. Hot pass is in. We didn't have any problems with the root, no blow through. So we're good to go on to the fill. All right, so we're gonna get back into it. Now we're gonna start on our fill pass. I prefer to run a two bead fill, and I wanna leave this bottom bevel for myself. So when I'm coming back through to cap it, just like previously showed on my 2G, I like to keep this bevel, that way I can draw a nice straight line with this weld. We're going up to 1/8 rods. I'll be running about 1/18 on these. And again, starting on the bottom, that's gonna be our uncomfortable side over here. So we're gonna have to bend our rod a little bit, probably be uncomfortable for a few seconds. But that's all part of the game. So we'll go ahead, we'll get this fill pass started. Huh? So again, we're rolling our hands with the contour of the pipe. I'm not trying to take up that bevel. Just running this rod along there real nice and smooth. So that's where I get uncomfortable. We can go ahead and stop there, switch out our rods, and we'll get back into it with a new rod. So we get our slag saw here. Go ahead and we knock our slag off. Seems to be running pretty good at the amperage we're running. Everything seems to be going good for us. So we'll go ahead, we'll grab another 1/8 inch rod. And again, we're gonna start from our knees and we'll roll up almost to the top. Again, I always bend my rod with the direction of my travel. So we'll figure out where we're gonna be comfortable at. Probably be more comfortable if we start up here and roll up with ourselves. So go ahead and we'll get fired up here. Come back to our restart. Again, we're staying off of that bottom bevel. Now we're going to start rising up with the pipe, keeping our hands moving, keeping our wrists rolling. So now I'll go into the standing position to finish this weld out. Again, everything seems to be running pretty good for us. Weld's looking pretty good. Slag's coming off pretty easy. We're not entrapping anything. You know, any of the spatter BBs are falling right off for us, so we're really set on a pretty good amperage right there. Go ahead and brush it down. Check and make sure. We see a little that thin slag there. Run our saw against it. Go ahead and get our rod in here. We'll go ahead and finish out this top. So we'll go ahead into this restart. We'll roll back into the start, come back up here to 12 o'clock. Right there at 12 o'clock is where our stop's at. Everything seems to be running pretty good for us to this point. Grab our slag saw. Go ahead and remove any existing slag we got. Bead's looking pretty good. It's filling just how we want it to. So we'll go ahead and swap over here to the other side to get started over there. So again, running this 1/8 inch rod. About 118 amps. Go ahead and we'll finish out our first fill pass. Again, we bend our rod in the direction of travel. We'll go ahead and we'll get our restart in there nice and smooth. All right, so here's a good point. We broke that rod off. It stuck on us. So now we look for our slag saw, which I left up here on the top. Come back down here and we look. We didn't really deposit any weld metal, it just kind of stuck. So there's no reason to grind back. We go ahead and start with a fresh rod, get it bent in the direction we need it, and we'll go again. Again, we're keeping our wrists and our hands rolling with the contour of the pipe. We don't want to push this rod, we'll trap slag. So we'll go ahead and stop there so we don't end up in a severe push angle. Come around here, we'll knock our slag off. Again, the bead seems to be running really good for us, so we're not going to change any amperage. Our restarts are looking pretty good and smooth, so we don't have any problems up to this point. Again, we'll swap to the standing up position. Go ahead and get our fresh rod in there. Okay, so we got our fresh rod in there. Again, we're going to do a nice slick restart. Come right back up here to 12. We'll be done with the first bead. Keeping my wrist rolling so I don't have any push angle added to it. Right back into my tie-in, and our first bead's done. So again, we're keeping all of our rods in the bucket. Go ahead and we knock our slag off. It's coming off pretty good, which is another indication that we're running about the right amperage. So we'll go ahead and take our wire wheel, we'll clean everything up. So that's about where I want to be on my first fill. I'm really leaving that bottom bevel for myself. All of our spatter's falling off pretty good. Another indication our amperage is running just about right. Size of the welds is what we're looking for. We'll go ahead and we'll get started on the last fill pass. So we're gonna go ahead and fire into this final fill pass. Again, on the bottom of this 6G, it is very important that we stagger our starts and stops by a good ½ inch every time we start and stop. So we'll go ahead and fire into this. And now I'm just trying to get my overlap and fill this up as much as possible. Again, rolling my wrist with the contour of the pipe, coming up along, staying out of a push angle. Hands down, elbow up. And that is where we'll stop to start the last portion of this side of the fill bead. Go ahead and we'll knock all of our slag off real nice. All right, so we're back. We let this pipe cool down. We're ready to go ahead and cap this out. So we'll go ahead, we're gonna stay with the 1/8 inch rod. Like I said, I left the bevel for myself there. I can put a nice, pretty bead on there, nice and straight for my start. Again, starts and stops on this cap pass are just as important to stagger out as every other pass on this 6G. So we'll go ahead, we'll get our rod bent in the direction of our travel, and we're gonna go ahead and fire into this. Just following that bevel line, making sure I'm taking it all the way up. So again, stop there so we can go to the standing position. Go ahead and get our slag knocked off. Everything seems to be running still pretty good for us, which is what we're looking for. All right, so now we're in the stand-up position. Like we talked about, we want all these restarts on this 6G to be nice and smooth. So we'll go ahead and get our restart done, and we'll go up to 12 o'clock. Keeping our wrists rolling ahead of us. All right, so we're up there at 12 o'clock. We'll go ahead, we'll stop there. We'll knock our slag off and brush it down. So like we talked about, slag's coming off pretty good and easy. Not leaving any undercut or inclusions behind. That's really what we're shooting for. Go ahead and brush it down. We'll check our bevel, make sure we took it all the way, which we did, so we're looking pretty good. We'll go ahead and go into our second bead of the cap. So again, we're keeping everything the same here, same amperages, same rod. We're gonna stagger our starts and stops down here. And now we're just watching our overlap and trying to fill that bevel up. Keeping our wrist rolling with the pipe. We'll go ahead and we'll stop right there for our restart up to 12. Go ahead and knock our slag off real good. Got good overlap, no inclusions, no undercut. That's what we're shooting for. Go ahead and brush it down and inspect it. Everything seems to be running pretty good and tight, and that's all we're after. Keep it nice and tight, keep our overlap even all the way around. Go ahead back to the standing position. Finish out from the side to 12 o'clock. Again, our restarts are staggered and they all got to be nice and smooth. Tie right back in there to 12 o'clock again. Go ahead and take our slag off. Still coming off good. No undercut, no inclusions, everything's looking nice. So we'll go ahead and we'll go to the third bead of the cap. Everything's looking good. Our overlap's nice and even. Everything looks just how we want it to. All right, so again, same rod, same amperage, bending in our direction of travel. We'll go ahead, we'll stagger the restart down here on the bottom. Now we're watching that top edge, watching for undercut. We're watching our overlap. Go ahead and stop there so we can go to the standing position. Knock our slag off, check over there. We don't have any undercut. That's what we're shooting for. Everything's looking real nice and smooth. Go ahead and take that light film slag off. We'll go ahead and finish out this cap. So again, our restarts are all nice and staggered. We're finishing out the cap. We're on the home stretch. And that'll do it. That's the final part of the cap. We'll go ahead and clean it up and take a look at it. Go ahead and switch back over to our wire wheel. It's very important to always wear face protection when using this wire wheel. These wires will fly off and they stick in your skin, just about anything. All right, so that concludes our cap. And as we see here, we're nice and tight. Our overlap's all good and even. We don't have any undercut on the bottom or the top. Everything looks good. Good 3-bead cap. So for timing purposes today on this video, we did only cap out one side, and we're gonna get a closer look over here at it. Again, we got no undercut on the top or the bottom. It's a nice tight 3-bead cap with just about perfect overlap. The root's in there good and tight. Again, thank you guys for watching. We hope to see you again soon.
Thank you for watching our video today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something today. If you would like to get some more tips and tricks and become a better welder, then subscribe to our channel. And if you would like to learn even more right now, then click on our link. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.